Hello everyone, William here, and I am here to talk to you about the 5th episode of American Ninja Warrior Ninja vs. Ninja, also known as the Qualifier 5. So, a few things I want to talk about before we actually get to the first matchup, something that happened early on. One thing I kind of thought heading into the beginning of this episode was, man, that intro sequence is pretty long. I feel like, if they kind of cut it short and kind of, forget the whole, oh, you see all your favorite matchups of ninjas, and it's like, well, I mean, you don't have to say that every time. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning is that in the beginning of this episode, Matt Eisman claimed that he made two claims. One, he claimed that the first 4 teams that won from that won their episodes will be facing each other in the playoffs, and he went on to explain that they are actually part of the Sweet 16 of the tournament, which is kind of a weird thing to say because there is no Sweet 16 of the tournament. They've been calling it the playoffs this whole time, which is fair, which is fine, but it's not a Sweet 16. It's a top 12. You would need 21 episodes in order to have a proper Sweet 16 playoffs. Because you would need 64 teams if you assume no wildcard spots ever. But, in order, because there's 36 teams, that means 9 teams move on. And if you were to have a Sweet 16, that means you would have so many teams move on to the next round automatically. Then it's almost like there's no point in winning the second match. But I don't know. I digress. It's like, it seems, unless there's something about the rules I'm not completely getting, which seems kind of weird. I don't know. That just seems like a weird thing to say because, I'm pretty sure it's actually a top 12, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe my info from early on was slightly askew, but it's a weird thing to say because that means seven of the 16 teams were wild cards automatically. That's bizarre. Anyway, so man, I really hope I'm not wrong. Because I was told it was 12 that move on, and then the finals is 3 teams and a wild card. So we'll see. Anyway, so first matchup: Golden Hearts versus Average JoJo. So first up was Grant McCartney versus JoJo Bynum. With Grant McCartney, they want to mention how he's a big deal in Hawaii, always getting stopped by people. And they mentioned with JoJo, they mentioned he's 40 years old. He didn't get a lot of interview time. It was mostly Eisman talking. Very, very simple race here. This was the course this time around was the pole grasper spin cycle combo, which is I think my personal favorite combo of the 3. And you can tell this was one of the earlier episodes filmed because the net is higher on the TikTok. Simply put, Grant McCartney was able to take a lead on the pole grasper and kept his lead and won. He finished first. Then it was Natalie Duran versus Jessica Clayton. Jessica is... I remember Jessica from National Ninja League. I know she's from that Georgia area. That was indeed Ninja Quest that they filmed her vignettes of her training. I really at some point, I need to interview someone who owns a gym, and I gotta be like, yo, what's it like to have A&W come and film? And that's a question I want to ask someone. Anyway, so Natalie's like, oh, she's getting her pilot's license. It's just kind of fluff. So the big thing here is that Jessica got a small early lead on the Sonic Swing, but the big deal was that Natalie, she got wet on the poles because she went for the big jump, but grabbed low, and then got so Jessica took the lead. She finished the spin cycle first. Natalie, trying to catch up, just missed the transfer from the trampoline to the first spin cycle and lost. Jessica still finished and got the got the buzzer and got the point for the team, tying it up 1-1. So we're guaranteed a relay at this point. Next up, Neil Craver versus Jimmy Bogle Jr. This is Neil's big return from injury. He had to work out his shoulder injury, and Jimmy's got a new baby. This was very simple. Just Jimmy slipped on the TikTok. He didn't get a good enough jump. He just fell right off, and Neil, just like that, won. He still finished anyway, get some practice in the course, don't blame him. So Golden Hearts up 2-1, then it comes down to the relay. So for the Golden Hearts, it was Natalie, Neil, and Grant, and for Average JoJo's, it was Jessica, Jimmy, and JoJo. So the women, relatively even. Slight lead for Jessica, but Neil and Jimmy were neck and neck on the floating tiles. They were doing the floating tiles at the exact same time, and they both went down in the same spot at the end. They both hit the water. If anyone's confused why Neil was considered out, when because he was still hanging from the poles, from like the cabling, it's because if you look at the replay, he very clearly hit the bottom of the tank, which is that's a clear out. Like, I guess that's sort of like the barometer for telling if someone's out. It's like if you hit the bottom of the pool, yeah, you're definitely out. So basically, it came down to JoJo and Grant doing two obstacles, the spin cycle and the warped wall. It was close, but Grant finished faster, and so Golden Hearts win 3-1. So the other matchup in the first round was Three Wishes versus the Towers of Power. So the big story with this one is that 2 days before the competition, Brandon Mears had to drop out of the Towers of Power because of a family emergency involving his baby boy. Hopefully he's recovered. Obviously you don't want you hear about anything bad happening to kids or anything like that. So best wishes to him. So Brandon was replaced by Nate Burkhalter at the last minute. But the first match was the captains, Thomas Stillings versus Dan Polizzi. I guess it doesn't really matter if the captains go first or not. I mean, it matters a little bit, but not a lot, because there's no anchor 2-point run anymore. So basically, with this one, it was a relatively close race. I think one of the big differences I would say is actually the very beginning. Dan got a little bit of a late start in the beginning, but Thomas, despite it being close, was able to finish first. So Three Wishes go up 1-0. So then it was Brittany Hanks from Three Wishes versus Selena Laniel from Towers of Power, once again representing the firemen and women of her team. So basically one of the big things early on is that one thing they mentioned is that Selena is almost 20 years older than Brittany, but Selena got hung up early on TikTok. She I don't know, it was like a late jump, and or just like she didn't get enough momentum, and she ended up hanging from the net for a little bit. She was actually able to catch up on the spin cycle, but both of them got hung up on the obstacle. They just couldn't make that transfer to the second spin. But unfortunately, Brittany was able to clear the obstacle, but Selena fell. She fell backwards into the starting platform, which you never want to see. She looked like she was okay, thankfully. But Brittany went on to clear the course anyway, so Three Wishes are up 2-0. So it came down to Brian Burkhardt versus Nate Burkhalter. The two of them have very similar names. Jeez Louise. Nate representing Towers of Power, last minute replacement. Unfortunately, it was a very quick race. Nate he just didn't jump far enough to the TikTok. His feet were short of the lip of the pillar, and he just fell straight in. He tried hanging on, but he fell over, and so Three Wishes sweeps it 3-0. Poor Towers of Power. They're a good team. It's just sometimes things happen, you know? So now, came down between Golden Hearts and Three Wishes. So first up for Golden Hearts was Grant McCartney versus Thomas Stillings of Three Wishes. Now, of course, this is the extended course, and they have to, do all 9 obstacles. And Grant, he was able to get a bit of a lead on the pole grasper in the beginning, but by the time they got to the salmon ladder, Thomas turned it around, was able to take the lead on the salmon ladder, and even though it was close, by the time they were on the zigzag climb, Thomas Stillings won, and they were up 1-0. And then this was surprising. This is kind of like why I brought up the whole intro being a bit too long, is that they fast forward the women. Basically, what happened was Natalie couldn't get up the warped wall, and Brittany was. So Brittany scored for Three Wishes and took the lead 2-0. Then it came down to Neil Craver and Brian Burkhardt. I think that's what it is. I'm sorry. Neil needs to win to keep his team alive, and they were neck and neck at the pole grasper. Brian takes a slight lead on the top floating tiles, but I mean they're very close to each other. But the big difference maker is the rumbling dice. Brian somehow took his dice off the track, and I don't know if the course designer is to blame or if Brian is to blame for this one. I couldn't figure it out. I think it's probably in the best interest to try to keep those dice on, but I don't know. This isn't like the Joe Morosky one where I blame A&W from back in the day. So this was basically Neil's golden opportunity to take the lead, and he finished. And Brian was just unable to recover. He went down the dice. So relay time. Golden Hearts have to win 2 in a row in order to win. For the Golden Hearts, it's Natalie, Grant, and Neil. And for Three Wishes, it's Brittany, Thomas, and Brian. Now, Natalie was the big difference maker here. She took a huge jump on the poles, took a big risk, paid off, get the lead on the poles, and give her team the lead. And basically, Grant was perfect on his section, gave it to Neil. Neil was pretty perfect. Brian gave him a bit of a scare because Brian started going through that salmon ladder quickly. But Neil was able to finish first, but bit of a concern because Brian failed the zigzag climb. He slipped off relatively early, and unfortunately, he fell in between the mats. There's 2 mats, one in the beginning, and then there's like a big air mat, crash mat, at the end for when the zigzag climb gets higher. He fell right where those 2 meet, and immediately when I saw that, I'm like, oh, that's not good. That is not good. And it wasn't, unfortunately. He had injured his shoulder and was taken out of the competition by the medics. So it was tied 2-2, which means Three Wishes needed a replacement, and they did, in the form of Jeff Lancaster, who apparently he's been to the national finals before, and I just I don't know, I don't remember that name, unfortunately. Jeff did fine in his part. He took the second leg, where Thomas took the last leg for his team. Otherwise, everything else was the same. Basically, this time around, once again, Natalie was the difference maker for her team. She took that big lead on the pole grasper once again. 2 out of 3 times that move where she makes the big jump has paid off. Actually, probably 3 out of 4. Because of the fast forward, I don't remember seeing if she did that. But more importantly, Brittany got hung up on the pole grasper as a result, because they were like fighting, and then she couldn't She couldn't grab onto the pole. Natalie was just the big difference maker for this relay. And so the rest of the crew, the Golden Hearts, were able to finish. Thomas Stillings on the last part gave it his best shot. He did multiple rungs on every jump of the stamina ladder he did. Unfortunately, just wasn't enough for him. It was unfortunate. And my pick, Golden Hearts, win and move on to the next round. Three Wishes gets the wild card. And as for the other two teams, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. And hopefully I don't look foolish with this whole Sweet 16 thing I was talking about. I think I'm right. I think in order for the numbers to make sense, I think it has to be what I said. So, only one thing left to do. And I gotta get my cell phone in my pocket. And even though it is really not that far ahead before the episode actually airs, I'm going to tell you my predictions for the sixth. There it is. For the sixth qualifying episode of Ninja vs. Ninja. So, first up, we got the Lab Rats, Chris Wilczewski, Michelle Wonky, and Brian Wilczewski versus the Big Dog Ninjas. Jody Avala, Brandy Monteverde, and Josh Salinas. I mean, first off, really? You're still using Big Dog? Jody, you could have just, ignored that. Lab Rats for me. And then it's the Ballers versus Team Alpha. Lauren Bull, Paul Casimir, and Mei Ling Huang versus Brent Stevison, Sydney Olsen, and David Yarder. And, I mean, I picked the Ballers to win the entire show, so I'm going to go with the Ballers. And then obviously I'm going to go with the Ballers to win the episode and move on to the next round. So easy picks in that regard. But yeah, that's everything for me. What was your thoughts on the fifth episode? Did you like the Golden Hearts comeback? Was there anything that you didn't care for? Did you think they maybe could have done a better job with the safety mats? I don't know. It's a tough call because, unfortunately, he fell in, the one spot it was unsafe to fall in. Let me know in the comments and make sure you subscribe, and I will see you relatively soon for the next review of American Ninja Warrior, Ninja vs. Ninja. Goodbye.